In May 1996, Atal Bihari Vajpayee took the oath to become India's Prime Minister. Exactly 13 days later, his government collapsed. The office he briefly held commands a nation of over 1 billion people. It controls a nuclear-armed military and directs one of the fastest-growing economies on Earth. While India has a president, that role is strictly ceremonial. The actual day-to-day authority to run the country sits squarely on the Prime Minister's desk. But that authority comes with a massive structural catch. The Prime Minister serves entirely at the pleasure of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of Parliament. If a governing coalition fractures and a Prime Minister loses the support of the majority, they are out of a job immediately. That circular building is where this constant threat of political execution plays out. The ultimate seat of power in the world's largest democracy is terrified of its own fragility. To survive, the office has had to constantly mutate. In the late 1960s, a powerful faction of political bosses, known as the Syndicate, thought they could control the office. Led by men like K. Kamaraj, they engineered the rise of a leader they assumed would be a compliant puppet. They severely underestimated Indira Gandhi. Instead of taking orders, she purged her rivals, bypassed the party apparatus, and violently centralized executive control into her own hands. Her absolute control triggered a massive backlash. By 1974, inflation, corruption, and food shortages fueled the JP movement, sending millions of angry protesters into the streets and threatening to physically topple her government. Facing total political destruction in June 1975, she pulled the ultimate survival lever. She advised the president to declare a national emergency, suspending civil liberties, jailing political opponents, and shutting down the press. To avoid losing power, the Prime Minister's office mutated into an authoritarian force. It proved that democratic norms could be legally dismantled from the inside if the executive felt threatened enough. The Indian public eventually punished that overreach, voting the government out and fracturing the political landscape. By the late 1980s and 90s, the era of absolute dominance was gone, replaced by hyper-fragile coalition governments. Survival now meant playing a daily game of mathematical chess. Leaders like Chandrasekhar governed for mere months, constantly negotiating with regional rivals and fending off backroom betrayals just to keep their cabinets intact. Long-term policy requires a guaranteed term in office. When prime ministers like I.K. Gujral are holding together a government that lasts slightly less than a year, vision takes a back seat to weekly survival. The office became so paralyzed by these shifting alliances that nothing could get done. Exhausted by the chaos, the electorate began looking for a way to break the deadlock. That deadlock broke in 2014. Narendra Modi led his party to the first single-party majority in 30 years, rejecting the era of fragile coalitions. Instead of relying on regional power brokers, the office secured its survival by building a direct pipeline to the voters. Massive, centralized welfare and technology campaigns, like Digital India, bypassed local politics to brand the Prime Minister directly as the provider of progress. That projection of absolute strength extended to national security. The 2019 Balakot airstrikes were heavily leveraged to project an uncompromising, invulnerable executive. Meanwhile, traditional checks on the office eroded. The government bypassed the independent press, utilizing radio and social media to manage the public narrative without friction. Modern political survival relies heavily on this centralized personality. By keeping the electorate directly attached to the leader, the office inoculates itself against the very parliament that technically has the power to remove it. The office of the Indian Prime Minister looks nothing like the institution drafted in 1947. It has been hammered into its current shape by the specific crises it barely survived. To govern a rapidly developing nation of over 1 billion citizens, the person sitting at that desk feels compelled to accumulate as much power as possible. But the absolute authority required to force progress through a fractured system is the exact same force capable of suffocating the democracy itself. And history shows us exactly what happens when the pressure builds and the pendulum swings back.